said, not many people listen to training providers, and we don't seem to have the air of people that should be listening. What are the sort of the challenges that the apprentice training providers are finding, and what are they saying at this moment in time? What's the mood generally like within the further education skills market?
I should say that it's probably slightly different now, that actually training providers through like the Association of Education and Employment and Learning Providers, ALP, through the Association of Colleges and other bodies, they do get their voices heard, but perhaps they have to continue fighting to do so. I think the main challenge is, there's a number of them really, but if they find it hard to attract talent, keep talent, skills coaches who go out and deliver the service to apprentices and to employers, etc. That's really difficult to do if you can't pay them competitive wages. And when you are seeking, for example, a data expert to go and deliver that, they can get much more by working in industry than they can in education. So they find it hard to maintain sort of quality and consistency of staff in a way that they would want to. And I think funding bans have a lot to do with that. So if you talk to any training provider, they'll tell you that funding bands need to keep, I suppose, aligned with inflationary or the cost of delivery now, and they're not. So they do, they do get reviewed, etc., but probably it's quite a long time or lengthy process to get reviewed. So I think funding is a constant challenge, how you look at delivering for value at the same time as keeping your apprentice and your employer at sort of heart of everything that you do. So
it's a tough juggling act, I think, for any training provider to try and balance the books as well as innovate and keep compliance and everybody happy.
I totally agree. And I think compliance is a really important point. Training providers often talk about having more and more growing their compliance teams because there's more and more regulation. Some of that's duplicated, whereas actually if we looked at regulation and looked at a better way of deduplicating that, they could put more resources into creativity, innovation, all those kind of things that they want to do. So I think that's a really good point.
So what are the challenges you're finding as an organisation, as an association, in terms of the issues, and what are those, if you can explain that to us in terms of a simplified way?
So the issues of running the organisation?
In terms of the training, the training, because you've got your apprentices, you've also got the training providers, you've got the SMEs, you've got the larger organisations, and ultimately what we're looking for is apprentices to have a good experience and for them to complete their activity. But there's obviously a lot of dynamics involved in that. So what are those sort of changes that we need as an organisation? You talked about funding rates already. Definitely need looking at. There's been some sort of tweaking, but it's not been enough. But what others are there? You talked about compliance as well as a sort of a challenge in terms of policy, a lot of paperwork. Is there anything else that potentially?
Yeah, I think from an employer perspective, employers find the case for apprenticeships to make it internally is actually quite difficult. So you can sell the benefits and the return for apprenticeships, but actually when you get into an organisation, absorbing that operationally can be quite a challenge. Like, for example, if you've got a big operation and you need people to have off-the-job training, for example, to some organisations, particularly in sort of retail, indeed in banking we saw it as well, to backfill people whilst they're having their off-the-job training is actually really costly. So I think there's some things around absorbing the apprenticeship rules in a way that sort of operationally doesn't harm your business can be quite a challenge. And I think there's probably some simplicity that could be or could help there if we looked at that particular policy. We talk, or you'll hear some noise in the sector around sort of maths and English. And whilst, I personally think, and I know a lot of others do, it's really important to have maths and English in the apprenticeship. I don't believe it should stand in the way of somebody actually completing their apprenticeship, particularly if it's not needed for their occupation. So I think there's some things there that, working with the new government, working with civil servants, we can share experiences, and if those things can be tweaked, actually that would unlock quite a lot of supply and some of the barriers to completion. And then I think, for an SME, there's a whole complexity. You don't have somebody who's an HR person, you don't have somebody who's an apprenticeship specialist, and you've got to kind of make your way around it. I'm a micro organisation, I have an apprentice on my team. When we set up, I had difficulties with the digital apprenticeship service. And I'm a professional in apprenticeship, so even I found it challenging. Having said that, the DFE team were amazing and really responsive. But, training provider-wise, I was given a 40-point PowerPoint deck to read through. So it's a good job I know, and my apprentice knows what's expected of us, because that wasn't the best experience. So I think there's some things we can do to make it less complex for smaller businesses and easier to manage, but also there's those points within the current apprenticeship policy that could be tweaked that would make it simpler.
Okay.
Canny Conversation Podcast Series 5 by Safaraz Ali.